The New York Times, a former newspaper, recently ran a story with this headline, quote, "Men, where have you gone? Please come back," unquote. The subheadline was, quote, "So many men have retreated from intimacy, hiding behind firewalls, filters, and curated personas, dabbling and scrolling. We miss you," unquote. Now, I know what you're thinking. You're thinking, oh, Klavan, you smoking hot hunk of hilarity. A joke is a joke, but do you really expect us to believe that that was a headline in the same former newspaper that has spent the last 40 years denigrating men and marriage and promoting a sexual culture of such degrading perversion that it could only be intended to cause even a fully operational male to recoil horrified from sexual communion, as if he were Ben Affleck in the moment he suddenly realized he had left the really nice Jennifer for the Jennifer with the admittedly spectacular body, but with the kind of personality that could make even a fully operational male recoil horrified from sexual communion, as if he'd spent the last 40 years reading the New York Times. Okay, sure, even I've forgotten where that sentence began, but the point is, no, I'm not making this up. This article, wondering why men had retreated from intimacy into a world of solitary stimulation utterly devoid of emotional content, was written by Rachel Drucker, a woman who spent part of her career working for Playboy and its affiliated hardcore outlets, enticing men to retreat from intimacy into a world of solitary stimulation utterly devoid of emotional content. She writes, quote, and this is a real quote, I'm still not even making stuff up yet. "I remember when part of heterosexual male culture involved showing up with a woman to signal something, status, success, desirability. Women were once signifiers of value, even to other men. That dynamic has quietly collapsed," unquote. So, baffled by this mystery, the New York Times did what they usually do in such circumstances. They sent their reporters to find out what men think by interviewing women. For instance, they spoke with Karen Screamy Hateface, president of the Society for Harridans Who Are Intolerably Loud, or SHRIL. Miss Screamy Hateface said, quote, "I can't for the life of me figure out why I can't get a date with one of these toxic snakes. I've got the pink hat, all the right tattoos, and plenty of insight on how to make men be better than they are. What do these bastards want from me? Tenderness?" Unquote. The Times also interviewed the holder of the Guinness Book World Record for highest body count, Karen Spikenose, who told them, quote, "Frankly, I think most men are just too sexually insecure. They're always afraid I'm going to compare them to all the men I slept with yesterday. But really, I'm the sort of girl who usually takes each man separately. It's more time-consuming, but I feel it makes for a more intimate 7 minutes," unquote. And they interviewed divorce attorney Karen Crotchfangs, who told us, quote, "I just think men don't know what they really want. They say they want a feminine girl like me who gets all made up for a date and wears pretty dresses and lets them pay for dinner, but then the minute they see my penis, they run for the hills, sometimes without even finishing their drink," unquote. In the end, however, despite its considerable reportorial power, the New York Times somehow could not solve the mystery of why men no longer feel that women add value to their lives. Now, part of our job here at the Daily Wire is to bring you the kind of material that outlets like the New York Times simply can't provide, like journalism. So we immediately sent our reporters out into the field. And when they didn't come back from the field, but simply went prancing off across the grass, picking flowers and weaving garlands of daisies for one another's heads, we sent out some more reporters to interview a prominent man on why he had retreated from intimacy. Unfortunately, the man just kept sobbing violently and crying out, "What was I thinking? I could have had the nice Jennifer." Trigger warning, I'm Andrew Klavan, and this is The Andrew Klavan Show. All right, we are back laughing our way through the best presidency ever. I have to tell you, just totally by coincidence, my son, Spencer Klavan, no relation, we write this Substack together, the newjerusalem.substack.com, and every month or so we do an essay, and he does the essay on Monday, it'll show up. He does this month's essay, and it's about this exact same article. We weren't even talking to each other about it, and we were both looking at the same articles, so you might want to check that out on Monday at the newjerusalem.substack.com. And No matter where you are listening to this, if you're watching it on YouTube or on DailyWire Plus, or just in your own dreams, you're having nightmares about it, you might want to leave a comment there in your nightmares. And if they are nightmarish enough and racist and sexist and all the other things that we do here, we'll read it on the air. Today's comment is from Curtis Budden, 5802. He says, my daughter arrived 3 weeks early just so that she could listen to this episode. Perfectly rational girl. Although she does cry a lot and is entirely dependent on other people, so she may be a leftist. Yeah, a lot of times infants are leftists, but then they grow out of it. All right, let us get to today's episode, A Matter of Life and Death. My title today comes from the Bible. And it comes from what I think is one of the most touching and moving passages in the Bible. That's one of the greatest pieces of writing in all of human history. I've edited it for time, so go read the original, which is in Deuteronomy chapter 30. And it just, a little bit of it goes like this. The Lord will again take delight in prospering you as he took delight in your fathers when you turn to the Lord your God with all your heart and with all your soul. For this commandment that I command you today is not too hard for you. Neither is it far off. It's not in heaven that you should say, who will ascend to heaven for us and bring it to us that we may hear it and do it? Neither is it beyond the sea that you should say, who will go over the sea for us and bring it to us that we may hear it and do it? But the word is very near you. It's in your mouth and in your heart so that you can do it. I call heaven and earth to witness against you today that I have set before you life and death, blessing and curse. Therefore, choose life that you and your offspring may live. Now, what I find so touching about this, actually two things that I find incredibly touching about this. One is the pleading tone of it. I mean, this is the king of the universe speaking to a bunch of primitive tribesmen, and he's not threatening them with punishment. He's telling them what the results of their choices will be, and he's begging them to take the good choice, choose life, please, And anyone who is a father knows that in the end, you can discipline your kids, you can force them to do things when they're little, but in the end, they grow up and they're on their own, and you can only beg them and pray that they will accept whatever wisdom you have. And that's one of the things I find so touching about this, is that even God, because he's so committed to our freedom, can only plead with us to listen to what he's saying. And then the second thing that I find incredibly touching about this passage is the realism of it. I'm sure you have noticed this in life if you have ever tried to talk a friend or a loved one out of doing the thing that hurts him most, and how incredibly difficult it is, how people cling to the thing that's destroying them. So you say to them, stop smoking dope all the time. It's ruining your life. No, you small-minded, So I wrote this passage. And I'm sorry to read a passage of my writing after the Bible. I can't compare the two, but it's just to show you the realism of the Bible, how it translates into everyday life. I wrote this novel, I think in 2009, Empire of Lies, and in it, the protagonist is talking about friends who have headed down what he calls the road to disaster. And he says, sometimes it even happened that these friends would come to my wife, Kathy, and me and ask us for advice. We are heading down the road to disaster, they would say. What can we do to avoid the disaster at the end? And Kathy and I would answer, stop going down that road. Stop cheating on your wife, or spending too much money, or neglecting your children, or drinking. Turn around and go back and go down another road instead. And every single time, they would say to us, oh no, we can't do that. We have many good and sound and necessary reasons why we must go down the road to disaster. Therefore, give us some other advice. Give us some advice that will make the road to disaster end somewhere other than in the disaster to which it inevitably leads. So today, I think it's really clear we have this amazing chance to return to some of the founding principles through which God blessed our fathers in the land that he had given them. Now, I have my own personal, maybe superstitious, maybe completely wrong opinion that we've been given this second chance because we repealed Roe versus Wade. There's a high court decision that stripped a class of persons of their humanity, which we had done in slavery days as well. I don't speak for God. That's just my personal opinion. But whatever it is, we have this chance. And on the left and on the right, there are voices calling us to not take the chance, but stick to the road of disaster, to choose death rather than life. And so I want to look at what that looks like in our little history and the stuff that's been happening just this week. Do you find yourself tossing and turning all night, constantly flipping your pillow to find the cool side? Welcome to my world. If you or your partner are hot sleepers, summer nights can become a battle between exhaustion and overheating. That restless cycle of too hot, too cold, never quite right can leave you longing for the cool, comfortable sleep you deserve. With Boll Branch's best-selling Percale sheets, you'll finally get the cool sleep you've been craving. These aren't just any ordinary sheets. They're crafted with a special cooling weave using the finest 100% organic cotton that feels crisp and breathable against your skin. Even if you're the sweatiest sleeper in the house, you'll stay comfortably cool all night long. And here's the best part. You can try them risk-free with their 30-night guarantee. No matter your bedroom style or mattress size, Boll Branch has designs and colors to match perfectly. These all-season sheets start with breathable, unmatched softness that only gets better with every wash. Plus, they're crafted by artisans who earn the pay and respect they deserve, so you can feel good about your purchase. I love Boll Branch. I test them for you by lying awake all night long, testing them, and they really do work, and they really are comfortable, and they look great too. Feel the difference an extraordinary night's sleep can make with Boll Branch. Get 15% off plus free shipping on your first set of sheets at bollandbranch.com/Klavan. That's Boll and Branch, BOLLAND branch.com/ how do you spell it? KLAVAN to save 15%. Exclusions apply. See the site for details. Chapter 1, Sympathy for the Devil. So Trump gave the order to bomb Iran's nuclear facilities, as I told you last week when I was giving you this week's news last week. I told you he's make the exact right choice at the exact right time because his motive was 100% correct, to rid a bunch of apocalyptic Looney Tune people of nuclear weapons. I mean, that was a good motive. And so that's positive. But also his political and his personal interests are all bound up in being a peacemaker and bringing peace to the world because he knows that's good for business. And he knows it's good for our country. It's good for the world. And that was going to keep him from acting hastily, from being drawn in to war, to commit an act of violence before it was time or when it wasn't necessary or just because we could help somebody out and we didn't need to or it put us in danger. So I really had a lot of trust in him for this because of that reason. His personal and political interests were bound up with not doing what he knew to be the right thing to do, so he wouldn't do it hastily. And of course, because you heard he would do the right thing here, it turned out to be true. If I had told you he was going to do the wrong thing, he would have been forced to do the wrong thing because I project my mind into the future. So before it happened, they were saying, the left was saying on the news, they don't really have the capacity. Some of the right-wingers too were saying on the news they don't really have the capacity for nuclear weapons. And then the minute it happens, look, this raid was just brilliant. The stuff we've seen from it already, it was like apparently in the planning stages for 15 years. There were these couple of analysts, according to the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, Dan Raisin Kane, as they call him. These two guys were just dreaming about this, thinking about this for 15 years, how to do this. And it was an unbelievable piece of business. Apparently, they refueled repeatedly on the way, which only our people, and I think the Israelis can do at that level. They dropped these bunker buster bombs, these huge bombs, down an air shaft. You've got to be have pretty good aim to do that. It was amazing stuff. My wife said to me, if they had to refuel in midair so many times, how did they keep from putting the credit card in the pump the wrong way? So they had to go see the attendant in the mini mart, because women don't really understand aerial warfare. I explained to them that these guys are trained so well that they get that credit card in the pump the right way every single time. So anyway, it was obviously like this incredibly great assault on these horrible weapons held by horrible people, or potential weapons, but held by the worst people on earth, these crazy, crazy Nazi Islamists. And so immediately the press turns against it. And it was done at just the right moment, just to help, finish the work that Israel had been doing so brilliantly, fighting them on the ground and fighting them in the air. And so immediately the press starts to denigrate it. Just like, remember when the head of the FBI, the then head of the FBI, said, Trump wasn't really shot. He was hit by shrapnel, as if shrapnel couldn't blow your head off. So this is Natasha Bertrand on CNN. She immediately comes out with this report, and the rest of the press immediately picks it up. This is cut 4.
based on a battle damage assessment that was carried out by U.S. Central Command, essentially looking at the images and looking at what was actually damaged. The Defense Intelligence Agency has assessed that the core components of Iran's nuclear program are largely intact, and that Iran's nuclear program has essentially only been set back by months.
So she did say up front that this is a preliminary report. She did emphasize that, but she didn't point out that it was a low confidence report. And the fact that it had been leaked, why does anybody ever leak anything out of the Trump administration? There's only one reason, and that's to attack Donald Trump. But this is the same woman, Bertrand is the same woman who was hired and promoted at CNN after she peddled both the Russian collusion hoax and the Hunter Biden laptop is Russian disinformation hoax, and a lot of other hoaxes as well. In fact, here's White House smoke show Carolyn Levitt talking about her Cut 13.
Bertrand pushed the suckers and losers hoax. She also pushed the fine people hoax, which was taking the president's words purposely out of context. And then last October, and I believe this is notable, Natasha Bertrand published an article in Politico from the intelligence agency. She said that John Ratcliffe was speaking without any evidence when he said Iran was attempting to undermine President Trump's presidential campaign. And then we, of course, found out that was absolutely true. In fact, the Biden administration declassed an intel report which said they had high confidence that Iran had done exactly what Ratcliffe alleged. They did run an influence campaign to hurt President Trump's candidacy. In fact, we know the Iranians tried to take President Trump's life.
So, I mean, people are saying, oh, Donald Trump is angry about this as if he's thin-skinned. But no, this is the way the deep state attacks him. They use leaks with a willing press that happily echoes them. And so every other assessment, including Iran's, but Israel's, the CIA's, they all say that the strike was an enormous success, did absolute terrible damage to their nuclear program, which was, in fact, operational. We here at the Andrew Klavan Show got a final in-house assessment, a kind of video that they send to the president to tell us how it went. And we're going to leak it to you now. It's cut one.
We're going to win so much. We're going to win at every level. Hallelujah. Hallelujah. We're going to win economically. We're going to win with the economy. We're going to win with military. We're going to win with healthcare and for our veterans. We're going to win with every single facet.
Zippity-doo-dah, zippity-yay. My, oh my, what a wonderful day.
We're going to win so much, you may even get tired of winning. Yay! You'll say, please, please, it's too much winning. We can't take it anymore.
I feel pretty, oh so pretty. I feel pretty and witty and gay.
We have to keep winning. We have to win more. We're going to win more.
So that's a pretty positive report. I mean, you can't really get any better than that. And, the Secretary of Defense, Pete Hegseth, he got it right. He went after the press face to face, went right at him. And what he said is so obviously true. I just don't think it can be denied. It's cut 11.
Because you, and I mean specifically you, the press, specifically you, the press corps, because you cheer against Trump so hard. It's like in your DNA and in your blood to cheer against Trump. Because you want him not to be successful so bad, you have to cheer against the efficacy of these strikes. You have to hope maybe they weren't effective. Maybe the way the Trump administration has represented them isn't true. So let's take half-truths, spun information, leaked information, and then spin it. Spin it in every way we can to try to cause doubt and manipulate the public mind over whether or not our brave pilots were successful.
It's just true. It's true. And they hate Trump for a reason, because he will not join their lie. He will not kowtow to their lie. The lie that their policies work. The lie that their policies for Black people and minorities have not made those people's lives much, much, much worse. The lies that the government can do things that independent people are supposed to do. The lies that they, the elite, can govern us better than we can govern ourselves. And they've been living on that lie for 60 years, and perpetrating that life through the press, and now the press is exposed as he pulls their, he's basically the little kid who says the emperor isn't wearing any clothes. They just can't stand it, and they hate him so much for that they want him to fail, even if that means America fails as well. Then on the right, you have Dave Smith and Candace Owens and Ian Carroll, these guys who are now saying that either it's going to be World War III or that we've now been drawn into war by Israel. We're a client state of Israel. I think Candace said that. We're a client state of Israel, which is funny because then Trump imposed a ceasefire on these guys, which is not that good for Israel. It's good for the United States for there to be a ceasefire, but I think the best thing for Israel would be to go in and mop these guys up. But obviously it's utterly ridiculous. Candace is now saying that people who criticize her are being paid by rabbis in Israel. That is what she actually said. And I just want to say, if that's true, I'd like to give them my address because I'm getting bupkis for this. I'm just doing this as a public service. But the guy, I keep going after Tucker because I think he has a quality that could be better than this. He's the guy who said it was going to be World War III if we did it. It's cut 5.
A war with Iran is a world war. This is not 2002. Iran is now part of a coalition that includes the biggest economies in the world and the largest militaries in the world. So a war with Iran means a war in effect or, by proxy, but still a war with Russia, China, Turkey, and a lot of the rest of the world. So that's a world war. It's not just as simple as we're going to take out their nuclear facilities. Okay.
See, and again, the problem is factually untrue. Those countries do have an alliance, but it's an economic alliance. It's not like NATO. It's not like they have to go to war with the other. And so far, nothing. And I mean, they've made some noise about it, but I think Russia is too busy, and China. This is the last thing China wants. And Iran then responds with this. After he tells us it's going to be a world war, Iran responded with one of those performative launches they do where they send a couple of missiles at a U.S. air base in Qatar to save face. And then Tucker responded with a performative launch to save face. Here's his overdone reaction, cut 6.
Breaking news.
What now?
This is just sad on every level. Explosions have been heard over Doha, Qatar, after Iran launched a missile attack on the U.S. base there. Western officials told Axios that Iran had fired 6 missiles toward at least one U.S. base in that Gulf country. That base exists to protect Israel, by the way. I know Barry Weiss is constantly attacking Qatar. Qatar has done more to defend Israel. But anyway, hosting this base, which they don't need at all. It's the richest country in the world. They don't need to do it. They're doing it to be nice. But anyway, sorry. This is so distressing.
Have Americans been killed?
Officials said earlier that the base located just outside Doha was facing a credible threat. Trump officials are convening in D.C. The base is home to CENTCOM's HQ. British military personnel also served on rotation. Many planes have been moved out recently, satellite imagery shows. So that's all we know. It's so distressing.
So distressing. And, Qatar, there's just that evil Barry Weiss, a Jewish Barry Weiss, is, so mean to Qatar. Tucker's always being accused of being funded by Qatar. I know nothing about that. I have no information about that. But Qatar is a major funder of terrorism throughout the world and funders of other things as well. And it doesn't mean, I didn't think Trump should have taken that plane from them, but, it doesn't necessarily mean you're serving them, or even if Tucker is getting money from them, doesn't mean he's serving them. But that's just ridiculous. Again, just factually ridiculous. So the left hates Trump because he won't kowtow to their fantasy world and the fantasy world that they want to live in. And the right is mad because he won't kowtow to their identitarian fantasy where America can just pull in like a turtle into its shell and do nothing, and the world is just going to sit and wait on us and nothing bad is going to happen. And their identitarianism against the Jews. I mean, their hatred of the Jews. And the problem is not that their predictions are wrong. This was a risky thing. Trump took a risk. It could have resulted in worse war. It might still result in have some bad things. Everyone is wrong sometimes, and no one knows the future. The problem is that their philosophy has put them on the side of bad guys, the people who and oppress women and hang gays from cranes and don't give anybody freedom of religion or anything. And if, there's just no question, if they stopped fighting, there would be peace. And if Israel stopped fighting, there'd be genocide. And people say, people call me anti-Semitic just because I criticize Israel. No, I call you a fool because you side with evil and death, right? It's not that Israel never does wrong. That would make them unique in the annals of human history. It's that the Islamists are wrong. Everything they believe is wrong. Israel is a free country where everyone has equal rights, like America. It's right to be that way. It is good to be that way. It's moral to be that way. And the thing about it is, and the reason it is because freedom is life. When God says choose life, he's talking about freedom. You know, when the Jews went to their prophet and said, we want a king, God said to the prophet, well, don't worry, they're not rejecting you, the prophet, they're rejecting me, their king, God. You know, that's the problem. God wants us to be free. And here's when I always disagree with Knowles. Knowles is always saying we're free to do the right thing. No, we're free to choose the right thing, which means, unfortunately, that we're also can choose the wrong thing. But freedom is what God wants for you, because freedom, the freedom of choice, is life. That is what life is. It is choosing the right way. And it means war. Life means war. I'm not in favor of war. I think war should be avoided whenever you can avoid it. It should be avoided in every possible way you can avoid it. But life means war. People who are free have to fight wars because other people want to enslave them. They want to impose their imaginations on the world so they can believe their imaginations are the truth instead of the truth, right? Freedom and the systems of freedom like capitalism and democratic elections and free speech, these are hard because people want you to obey their fantasies and they want to take them away. And you have to fight wars. Trump took a risk and it seems to be working out well. And I think I really hope it's going to improve the Middle East and improve all of our lives. But even if he had failed, he would have been working in the interest of good over evil. And that's the thing, of freedom over slavery, of life over death. And that is always, always the choice we should be making. Losing someone close to you changes everything, and it's impossible not to think about what the future holds. The truth is, most of us worry about whether our families would be okay financially if something happened to us. The last thing any of us want is for our loved ones to struggle with bills and expenses during an already difficult time. That's where life insurance from Ethos comes in, giving you peace of mind that your family will be protected no matter what. Ethos makes getting life insurance surprisingly simple and affordable. Their completely online platform eliminates the hassle of traditional insurance. No medical exams, no lengthy appointments, just a few quick health questions, and you can get a quote in as little as 10 minutes. What makes it even better is that you can often get same-day coverage without ever leaving your house, which means your family could be protected by the end of today. You might be surprised to learn that quality coverage can cost as little as $2 a day, and with Ethos, you can customize your policy to fit your budget while still getting up to $3 million in protection. The company has earned serious recognition. Business Insider named Ethos the #1 no medical exam instant life insurance provider as of March 2025, and they boast an impressive 4.8-star rating on Trustpilot. It goes to show why they've become the go-to choice for people who want reliable coverage without the runaround. Life insurance matters. You got to have it. You got to protect your family with life insurance. Do it with Ethos. Get your free quote at ethos.com/Klavan. That's ethos.com/KLAVAN. No E's in Klavan. I just make it look this easy. Chapter 2, Daddy Goes to NATO. So Donald Trump went to NATO at The Hague. And I went to see 28 Years Later, and these two things are connected. 28 Years Later is obviously the second sequel to Danny Boyle and Alex Garland's zombie franchise where zombies take over Britain. And it's a bad movie, but it's an amazing movie. It's a bad movie because it's sloppy. It's lazily directed and written. I don't even like these kinds of movies, these zombie type movies, but I went because I like Danny Boyle and I like Alex Garland's writing very much, but I thought it was bad. It was lazily written and lazily put together as a film, but it's amazing for reasons that I'm not hearing anybody talk about. And I think that nobody wants to say it out loud. So of course I have to. So here's Boyle and Garland in a kind of promotional video describing what they were doing when they made this movie. Just to bring you up to date, this rage virus has taken over Britain and it's now in quarantine. So it's only the only people dealing with this are the remaining survivors in Britain. And then the rest of the world is kind of just patrolling to make sure nobody goes on and catches this, what they call the rage virus. And here is Boyle and Garland talking about how they put together the sequel. Boyle first and then Garland, cut 14.
In 28 years later, we tried imagining how a world would rebuild itself after an apocalypse.
Initial conversations were often about imagining what does 28 years later mean. If the infection is still on Britain, what does the infection look like?
Get back to the truth.
How does the rest of the world respond to that?
So I don't have time to analyze the whole picture because I want to talk about other things. But this is a world in which the British have been reduced to medieval villagers, and they are they are back in medieval Britain. There are no black faces in this movie except for one zombie. The big zombie it looks like he's a brown guy. There are no women warriors because the way they're fighting, they have to pull these bows while they're running. 0% of women could do that, so they just don't. There are no women warriors. The women are back, keeping the home fires burning while the men go out and fight these things. And they've returned to nationalism, so they keep cutting away from the fights with the zombies, which are mostly bow and arrow fights. They keep cutting away to movies, war movies of Britain, especially Laurence Olivier's Henry V movie, which is obviously Shakespeare's play about the greatest hero king, Henry V, and his great battle at Agincourt against the French, where just a few Britons beat a massive French army with their bows and arrows, and he's a great nationalist hero. So they've gone back to their British roots, and you can't help but think that the zombies are, if they're not the Muslims, they're all the people who have come in, all the migrants who have come in, and all the people who are furious at them. But I don't know if they are. I think they're just the migrants. They've been reduced to the white British, and their flag is the cross, the English flag, not the British flag, which is just a cross, a red cross on a white background. There's one representative of high culture and tolerance who is Ralph Fiennes, and he's mourning the deaths of both the zombies and the regular people, but he's living in a temple of death. He's the representative of British high culture. He quotes Shakespeare. He speaks Latin. He has tolerance for all mankind, but he is living in a temple of death. Basically, all he represents now is death. And in the end, and this is a slight spoiler, but I'll keep it as vague as I can, the soccer yobs, the Tommy Robinsons become the ultimate warriors against this threat. I'm not saying, by the way, that Danny Boyle is saying, yes, this is the way it should be. He's saying this is what will happen if there is nothing left to do but fight. I think that's what he's saying. He's not recommending anything. He's simply giving you a vision of what that apocalyptic world looks like. And nobody's talking about this because nobody wants to say, yeah, the zombies are the Muslims in England who are raping women while the authorities look away, which is how the thing starts. It starts with children watching Teletubbies, this complete fantasy of a peaceful, loving world, until the monsters come in and devour everybody while the priest just sits there sort of crazily helpless. So, after the disaster of the 30 Years' War, being World War I and World War II, Europe died. And I have put this forward a lot of times, and people don't like to hear it, especially Europeans, but also people in the State Department. They think, well, no, don't say that. But that Europe had the greatest culture that had ever existed on Earth between 1500 and 1914. 30 years, it died, and they chose to let it die. They went into this stupid war, World War I, for no reason, and then just let Hitler rise up while they just sort of twiddled their thumbs and said, well, we don't want any more of that war stuff. And then the fact that they murdered the Jews tells you who they were rejecting when they chose death. The big Jew, Jesus, they were rejecting that religion, and they just decided, we're not doing this anymore. We're choosing not to be alive anymore. We're going to give up all our colonies. We're going to stop fighting wars. We're going to rely on the Americans to fight wars. We're going to pretend to be part of NATO, but we're not putting any money in there. And they let the Americans fight the wars, and we'll take the money that we save by not having to fight wars, and we'll have a great healthcare system, and we'll laugh at the Americans for not having as good a welfare system as us because they have to pay to protect us. That's death. That is saying we are no longer participating in our own defense. We're regressing to children. We're going, well, I'll talk about socialism in a minute, but socialism is a form of death and a form of authoritarianism. And so Trump goes off to NATO to try and convince them, to come back to life, to join the living, to choose life by defending themselves like men. That is what he goes back to do. And everybody's making fun of the head of NATO, Mark Rutte of the Netherlands. Trump got ticked off when Israel and Iran violated the ceasefire, and he said they've been fighting so long they don't know what the F they're doing. And he cursed on mic. And when he was asked about that, he said sometimes when kids are fighting, you have to let them fight for a while and then tell them to stop. And Rutte said sometimes daddy has to use harsh language, and everybody made fun of him, calling Trump daddy as if they were in a gay leather bar. And I just want to say that it's fine to make fun of powerful people, but I don't think that he wants to be in a sadomasochistic homosexual relationship with Trump. I have no proof of that except for the fact that he called him daddy. So I guess I have a little proof of it. But other than that, I have nothing to say about it. But Trump scored a big win. He got them to put in some more money into NATO to pay for more defense because daddy is begging Europe to come back to life. And the thing about life is not peaceful. Death is peaceful. When you're just lying there, it's peaceful. And again, I want to emphasize this. I hate war. I love peace, but pacifism is not a moral point of view. And that's what it comes down to. That's what it comes down to. That's what I'm hitting Tucker for. That's what I'm hitting CNN and the rest of the news media for, is what they're doing is not moral. They are not saying moral things. They are not siding with the people who are moral. Israel is a moral country because it's free and equal. That's what makes it a moral country. It's not a good country because it's filled with people. No country that has people in it is going to be a good country, but you can have a moral system, and that's what they have. Pacifism is not a moral point of view. It means that if you want to go on living, someone else has to fight your battles for you. Morality, real morality, has to refer to reality. And in reality, because freedom is life, people are going to try and take your freedom away. You can't be a pacifist or you will lose your life. So Trump is trying to revive Europe by getting them to commit to their own defense. And we should want that because the signs of Europeans choosing death were peace and socialism. That was the other sign of their choosing death. It's like we're no longer going to create money. We're just going to take the money that was created and spread it around and take it from the people who made it and give it to everybody else. And to understand why that's wrong, we have to take a little trip to my hometown, New York, New York. Now, I could sell you a Helix sleep mattress by telling you that it will help you fall asleep because it's so comfortable, and that would be true. But that's not what happens to me because I never sleep. So I get to experience Helix sleep comfort all night long. And one thing I love about my Helix mattress is how well it does with temperature regulation, which only eases some of those annoying middle of the night wake-ups. That's essential as the temperatures continue to warm up and we head into summer. Plus, it's easy to connect a mattress to other wearable devices so you can actually see the data to back up your sleep improvements each night. No more questions. What makes Helix different is they don't just sell you a random mattress, they actually match you with the perfect one for your body and sleep style. Whether you're a side sleeper, back sleeper, or like me, a non-sleeper, they have got you covered. All you have to do is take their sleep quiz and find your ideal match. Trust me, when you find the right match, you will wonder how you ever slept, or in my case, lay awake on anything else. Right now is actually the perfect time to upgrade your sleep because Helix is offering a fantastic 4th of July sale. Go to helixsleep.com/Klavan to get 27% off site-wide. That's helixsleep.com/Klavan for 27% off site-wide. Make sure you enter our show name after checkout so they know we sent you, helixsleep.com/Klavan. And I know what you're thinking, well, how can I do that if I don't know how to spell Klavan? How could I find out? Where would I know? Could I know how to spell Klavan? It's Klavan. Stay calm. Chapter 3, A Hell of a Town. So the Germans tried to destroy Europe twice, once by marching through in World War I and then once in World War II. But it was only when Angela Merkel let the refugees come pouring in, they finally succeeded. And they brought in the Jew-hating Islamists who knocked down who attacked our World Trade Center and is now taking over virtually Britain. And, it's always that Jew hatred is always showing up. When something is dying, when a Western civilization is dying, the Jew hatred is there. When a country is collapsing, Jew hatred. You always see it. It's the devil's flagpole. It is begging you to do the opposite of what God wants you to do. It's begging you to choose death. It's just a sign. I'm just saying it comes along with the territory. Why? Because the Jews brought God into the world, or let's put it another way, God came into the world through the Jews. So the Democrats had a primary, and it was one of these ranked voting primaries, which are very bad because if you don't get 50% of the vote, you get the second votes of the bottom tier. So you're getting the most radical people, you're giving them the most power. And they always say it's for moderate candidates, but it's not. It always promotes the most left-wing person. And this guy, Zoran Mamdani, who is a Jew-hating socialist Muslim. That's who he is. His father is a Columbia professor and of anti-colonialism. He's post-colonialism, and I'm very in favor of colonialism. I think we should have a lot more of it. But he works at Columbia University, and the young people and college graduates showed up to vote for him, showing that Columbia University should be disassembled brick by brick. The professors, especially the professors who are post-colonial, should be assembled naked, whipped through the streets, tarred and feathered, and then hurled into the Hudson, and then have rotten vegetables thrown at them as they go out. At least metaphorically, that should happen, at least. But anyways, just to give you a taste of this guy, he's a total nutcase. One of the things he has done, globalize the Intifada is one thing he has said. He said, well, it's just a struggle. The Intifada is just a struggle. It's not. It's an act of terrorism meant on wiping out the West. That's what it is. So globalize that. He wants to globalize that. And he at one point, now he says, of course, he denies all this, but at one point he said he wants to defund the police. And he said he wanted to defund the police because violence is just a construct. Here he is, cut 12.
So violence is an artificial construction. And we have to be very clear that what is happening here with these district attorneys, that is violence.
Violence is an artificial construction, but what district attorneys enforce the law by putting people in prison, that's the real violence. See, it's just an artificial. But then when he was called out for supporting globalize the Intifada, suddenly he's the poor Muslim victim. This is what he says, cut 7.
I get messages that say the only good Muslim is a dead Muslim. I get threats on my life. On the people that I love. And I try not to talk about it. Because the function of racism, as Toni Morrison said, is distraction. My focus has always been on making this a city that's affordable, on making this a city that every New Yorker sees themselves in. And it takes a toll.
It takes a toll. Why? Why is he crying? Because he was threatened with violence. Violence is an artificial construct. If they say they're going to kill the people he loves and only good Muslim is dead, it's just it's just an artificial construct. It's just violence. It's just violence. It's not real violence because it's like I choose what violence is. We get to define violence, just like we get to define men and women. He doesn't want to die because violence is real. Violence is a real thing. He just wants New York to die because it's free and because it. He's talking about socialism. He's saying we're going to have government-run grocery stores. That's going to work out great. He's going to have limited rents. He's going to have rent control, so landlords' properties can't make them any money. They can't make any money on their properties. There's going to be buses that are going to be free, and he's going to pay for this by taxing the rich. So great clip from CNN. A famous lawyer, Arthur Aidala, is saying that Mamdani is going to bring back the bad old days when I lived in New York, which was the 70s and 80s when crime was rampant, homelessness was rampant. You couldn't go out at night. It was really, really awful. It was just a terrible, terrible place. And then Giuliani, that great villain, came in, the greatest mayor New York ever had, cleaned the place up every single day, just like Trump. They yelled at him, they screamed at him, and I know now he's a little kooky, but at that time, he just cleaned that city up amazing. He was a great federal prosecutor, and he was a great, great mayor who cleaned that city up and turned it into the greatest city on the planet, the safest, most bustling, most brilliant, most glamorous city on the planet. It is now sinking back with the help of the New York Times, who helped repeal a lot of the actions that Giuliani took, and with Mayor de Blasio. And so Adela says Mamdani is going to bring back that horrible pre-Giuliani New York. And MSNBC's Joy Reid challenges him on that. She is, that woman, talk about somebody who needs to be in a padded cell, but Joy Reid challenges him. Here's the clip, cut 8.
What is your evidence that Mamdani would return New York City to the 1970s hellhole Times Square. What is your evidence of that?
It's very simple. So he wants to raise taxes on people who make the most money. What eventually is going to happen is you're going to lose that tax base. Once you lose that tax base, our bonds will get degraded. Now the city budget will not be substantial enough to subsidize not only the cops, but the fire department, the sanitation department. Once you start losing Wall Street and people who pay $11,000, $12,000 a month to live on the Upper East Side, you're done.
So that's right. And of course, you tax the rich. The rich don't have to, what are you going to do? Build a Berlin Wall around New York? The rich don't have to stay in New York. They can leave. So sometimes he says, well, I'll tax them in other states. Illegal. It's illegal for him to raise the taxes. He has to get the governor's approval to raise taxes as high as he wants to raise them. Grocery shelves won't be stocked. As in every government-run grocery store ever on any planet, the shelves will be empty. The homeless will come back because the landlords will say, oh, I can't get enough rent to make a profit, so I'm just going to leave these apartments empty. So you'll have all these empty apartments. People will be out on the street. There won't be enough houses for everybody. The city will die, and it will happen really, really fast. But conservatives love to make the argument that socialism doesn't work because it's true and it's visceral. But do you ever notice that the left pretends that capitalism doesn't work, but it so obviously does? The argument they make is that it's immoral because it's unequal, because it's unfair, and that there's truth to that, right? I mean, the capitalism, the people who work hard and have good ideas, they get richer than people who sit around and wait for somebody to save them and somebody to do stuff for them. But we forget the fact with socialism, we should make that argument too. Socialism is wrong. It is inherently wrong. It is inherently immoral because it's inherently authoritarian. I never hear, except for on the show, I never hear conservatives making this argument, not just that it doesn't work. We always love to say that, but if the government if you use your time to make money, time is money, and the government controls your money, it controls your time. Your life is made of time. The government controls your life. At what point does the government get the right to steal your money? At what point do you get so big that somehow stealing stops being stealing and starts to be taxation? I mean, look, there are projects that we need the government to do, like paying for the police, and paying for the police and paying for the world police, namely the army. Those are things we need them to do, so we pay taxes for that. But the government should not have the right to take my money and give it to someone else. That's charity. I should give to charity. You should be able to shame me for not giving to charity. But I don't see why the government should do that. They don't do anything else right, and it's wrong. It's wrong to do it. It's stealing. And it's just authoritarian. It has to be authoritarian. And the thing is, like I said, freedom is life. And if your money goes to the government, you are not free. If your time belongs to the government, you are not free. If the government decides what you're going to invest your money in, who you're going to give your money to, you are not free. And you're right. They're right. It's not equal. Capitalism is not equal. Only the dead are equal. Only the dead are peaceful. Only the dead are equal. It's only the dead who have no problems in the world, right? What we should be teaching children who fall for this, and for Bernie and for AOC who are supporting this Jew-hating socialist Muslim, is that, yes, life is hard and unfair. That means you have to work hard. Death is easy. Life is hard and it's unfair. That means you have to work. And everything that's good in life is hard. Every single thing that's good in life is hard. Love is hard. Work is hard. Survival is hard. All of these things are hard. And only the fact that other people do these things for us, that we have a military that's a volunteer military, that that the police patrol the streets. I mean, I think about this all the time. I read and write for a living. It's a beautiful way to make my living. But every day I think about the fact I can do this because Pete Hegseth and his warriors are patrolling the skies and the borders. And if they don't do that, I can't do what I do because people will kill you. Only death is easy. Life is hard and it's unfair. And yet, if you want joy, you have to choose life. If, like me, you're a homeowner, you need to listen to this. In today's AI and cyber world, scammers are stealing home titles, and your equity is the target. Here's how it works. Criminals forge your signature on one document. They use a fake notary stamp, pay a small fee with your county, and just like that, your home title has been transferred out of your name. Then they take out loans using your equity or even sell your property, and you won't even know it's happened until you get a collection or foreclosure notice. So, When's the last time you checked on your home life title? If your answer is never, it must be you need to do something about it right now. That's why I've partnered with Home Title Lock, so you can find out today if you're already a victim. I have gotten a foreclosure notice that was not deserved and came out of the blue. It is a really uncomfortable feeling. You don't want it to happen to you. So use my promo code Klavan at HometitleLock.com and you'll get a free title history report and a free trial of their $1 million triple lock protection. That's 24/7 monitoring of your title, urgent alerts to any changes, and if fraud does happen, they'll spend up to $1 million to fix it. Find out why you should trust Home Title Lock today. Go to HometitleLock.com and use promo code Klavan. That's HometitleLock.com, promo code KLAVAN. Final chapter, Zombie Nation. So, a while back, I asked R.R. Reno, the guy who edits First Things, excellent journal, if Europe is dead, should we decouple from them? And Rusty Reno is about my age, he's a little younger than I am, but he looked horrified because people my age just think of Europe as almost part of the United States, where we come from. We should be connected to them. And yet I can't help thinking that either they are going to come back to life and defend themselves and be part of the world and start to, be responsible for paying for the medicines that we create here because we pay for our medicines instead of having single-payer health care. Are they going to come back, or are they going to drag us down into the socialism, which is death? Socialism is a form of death, and so is fascism. These are things that are the end of freedom. Are we going to let them drag us down into that world? And he looked horrified. And last week I interviewed Yoram Hazony, and I wanted to ask him the same question, but we ran out of time, which is unfortunate. But I think about the death of Europe a lot and what we can learn from it, because in the year 1900, Europe was the pinnacle of human society. No human society had ever done as much as what Europe had done if it looked at as a single culture. There's no other society that can compare to Michelangelo and Shakespeare and Mozart and Bach and the philosophers and just all of the science, the incredible science that came out of the British century. That I picked 1900 because I think that was the Queen Victoria's Diamond Jubilee, I believe, but it was when they had the great exhibition and they just showed all these accomplishments. It was the pinnacle. 14 years later, death. And again, voluntary death. It was an attitude that came over, Virginia Woolf, one of the modernist writers, a writer I don't like very much, but still one of the famous modernist writers. She said on or around December 1910, which is 4 years before death came to Europe, on or around December 1910, human character changed. And a lot of the things we see today happened then. The disregard for the values of the ancestors, the disregard, the mocking, Lytton Strachey brought out that famous book, Eminent Victorians, where he made fun of the heroes of the Victorians and called them all hypocrites. But you could see even before that, if you looked at paintings by like Picasso, where suddenly, he's taking people apart. Why is he doing that? He says, well, a nose goes on a face, I put it anywhere I want. Why is he doing it? Why is everything falling apart? Munch's paintings like The Scream, Nietzsche's basic prediction that this is what happens when God dies. And Nietzsche was an atheist, but if he hadn't been an atheist, he still would have been describing rightly what happens when God is dead, which he said is a catastrophe. So all of these changes came into the population, which were a yearning after death, right? And they took control after the absolute horror of World War I. They took control of the narrative, basically. They said, well, this was caused by nationalism. We have to stop loving our nation. We have to stop loving religion. We have to get rid of what Reno calls the strong gods, It was a kind of insanity. A kind of insanity came over the populace. They started to believe that they could live without self-defense, that they could live without creating wealth. I mean, this is the crazy thing about socialism. We're going to give this money to this money, and that money there, and that money there. And nobody ever in socialism, this is an argument David Horowitz used to make, no one ever says, where is this money going to come from? What is going to create this money? I mean, money is just a symbol for work. It's just a symbol for value. That's all it is. So where is the value coming from if nobody's working? If I was saying, thank you for the money, thank you for the money. Well, where's it? Where's the tree that the money grows if not on work? And so, I am a committed artist and committed to talking about the arts and creating things that I hope are works of art. I became a political commentator not because, I always say I'm a conservative because I'm a liberal. I want people to be free and that only the conservatives are in favor of that. But I stumbled into political commentary not because I was so passionate about conservatism, but because I felt that the left had gone insane. I felt that the press was just all lies. I felt it was this ocean of lies. And I thought, this can't be good. This is death. It is. And I just lived in England and seen what a society, a passive, society mired in socialism, mired in pacifism, what it looks like. And I thought this could happen here, the same things could happen here if we start to hate our country as we seem to do after 9/11, when people started saying, if you wear a flag, I'm very uncomfortable when you wear that flag. Why? We have to find out why these people hate us. That was the one phrase from David Letterman that kind of set me off when I thought, what do you mean, why do they hate us? They're supposed to hate us. They're bad guys. We're the good guys. The bad guys hate the good guys and want to destroy them. So at the core of this, I cannot help feeling, and in a way, this is part of that movie 28 years later as well, is that it starts with the priest, the Anglican priest, basically going insane and saying, this is a wonderful thing. The end of the world has come. This is Armageddon. And he is carried away by the rage zombies and becomes one of them as we watch him. And that's the first scene in 28 years later, that basically the first thing to go is when the church stops being a bulwark of what? Of values, of human values, of humanity itself. The other movie I saw this week, I finished a draft of the next, not the Cameron Winter book that's coming out this year, but the one that's coming out next year. I finished a draft, so I had some time finally to watch some things and catch up on things. And I watched Accountant 2, and I really liked the movie Accountant. I'm a big fan of action movies, and I love them. Most action movies are bad, but I like them anyway. But The Accountant, the first one with Ben Affleck, the man who took the wrong Jennifer, was really original and interesting and had a lot of good stuff about the way the mob uses banking to hide their money and all this. And so this is Accountant 2. It's nowhere near as original, nowhere near as cool, but it does have some cute scenes in it, and it has that guy, John Barenthal, is that how he pronounces his last name? He adds something to every movie he's in. And Ben Affleck is one of my favorite actors. He just really commits to a role in a way I really like. But it starts out with the accountant, who is a severe autistic. He is severely autistic, and he goes to one of these speed dating things, and he's arranged the questions to make all the women want him. He's figured out the algorithm on how to make women come to see him. So the first woman sits down with him, and here's just a little clip of that, cut 9.
Hi. I'm Anne Renee, and I just love accountants.
Well, that's a coincidence.
Yeah. Do you believe in love at first sight? That there's someone we're meant to be with? A soulmate?
Oh, no, that's an absurd, childish notion. Of course that's not real.
What do you mean you reverse engineered our algorithm?
I data mined the top online dating apps and mapped a battery of your questions against theirs.
And?
I built my own dating algorithm. Well, the question of whether or not there's such a thing as love or it's simply an electrical, neurochemical process that takes place in the brain is up for debate.
Have a good day.
So she runs away. Why does she run away? Obviously, we all know instantaneously. We don't have to think about why she runs away. We know she runs away. But just to put it into language, she runs away because she is a person, not a series of electrochemical, reactions. She's a person who is looking to be loved by another person. She is not an object who wants to start a chemical reaction in another object, which is basically the way we think now. And it's the way we think now, even if we don't want to think that way, because God has gone out of our world. And this is the thing that I believe killed Europe. I mean, the two forces of fascism and communism that destroyed Europe are both godless, creeds. Fascism usually has some kind of pagan creed to it, but it's not God. It's not God's God. It's not the real God. Let's put it that way. And to disbelieve in God, to disbelieve in the spiritual, is to disbelieve in humanity. When you fall in love, there is no such thing as love, no such real thing as love, then you're just an object bumping into another object. Everything, your joy, your grief. I talked about this a little last week, about this idea that somehow this is, oxytocin is making you happy. That's what makes you love, instead of communicating your love to your body, which is what has to be true. It's so obviously true. The fact that we don't see it is part of the blindness. So if all these things are illusions, if life is just this long LSD trip in which only the chemicals that cause the hallucinations are real, but all the hallucinations, the love, the joy, the purpose that we feel, the faith that we feel, if all of that is just, a delusion, what choices can we make? We have no choices. Everything is pre-programmed. Everything is a chemical reaction. And you can if you just know where the atoms are going to go, you can predict everything. There is no free will. There is no choice. There is no freedom. There is no life. And I think that is the threat that we're facing, that people want to enter the world to become the creation of their imagination instead of the creation of God's imagination, in which we are real and the world is real, and our imaginations link to God's imagination to understand the world. So when you have faith, you're using your imagination to see God's hand in the world, but his imagination used as an organ of perception to see reality. When you start to use your imagination for your own selfish purposes, to say, oh, I don't want to be a man anymore, I want to be a woman, so I am a woman, then you have chosen death. You have chosen to separate yourself from reality. And the reason, why do we do that? Why is it hard to talk your friends out of smoking dope? Why is it hard to talk your friends out of adultery? Why is it hard to talk them out of being lazy and sitting around playing video games instead of going out and making something of themselves? Why do they resist? The answer is easy. It's death is easy and life is hard. And when you choose life, you choose the harder path. That's what God is calling us to do. He has given us a chance to do it once again. We have to take that chance. It's been 3 years since Roe v. Wade was overturned this June 24th, and here's what most people don't realize. Abortion numbers have actually reached a 10-year high. The landscape has completely shifted. Over 60% of abortions now happen at home with medication, often with women going through this alone without fully understanding what's ahead. That's where PreBorn Network clinics step in. They're seeing young mothers who were told this would be simple, but the reality is heartbreaking. Many go through this traumatic experience discovering that what they were told was just tissue looks very different from what they expected. 11% face serious health complications, and countless others carry emotional scars. When you support PreBorn, you're helping both mothers and babies. They provide hope, support, and truth when it's needed most. They've already rescued over 350,000 babies, but so many more need help. PreBorn clinics offer free ultrasounds, counseling, and practical resources like baby supplies and financial assistance. When a scared young woman walks through their doors, she finds people who genuinely care about her future and her baby's life. To donate, call pound 250 and say baby, or visit preborn.com/Klavan. Your tax-deductible gift makes this life-saving work possible. Again, that's preborn.com/KLAVAN. The 4th of July is 1 week away, but we're firing up the celebration early with 6 months of DailyWire Plus absolutely free. Join as a new annual DailyWire Plus member, and we will cover the price for half the year. That means you get unlimited access to ad-free shows from the most trusted voices in conservative media and myself. You also get exclusive docs, hit movies, breaking news alerts, and the best investigative journalism in the business. This isn't just a membership. It's a movement of people like you building something the left can't burn down. Go to dailywireplus.com and claim your 6 free months today. Klavan Klapbacks.
They're chanting death to America all around me, even as I say, oh, I'm an American reporting for CNN, and they were happy to speak to me.
Yeah!
CNN, death to America and being friendly towards CNN are not, that's not a paradox. All right, Klavan Klapbacks, Klavan with a K, Klapbacks with a K at DailyWire.com. Klavan Klapbacks at DailyWire.com. Ask us anything you want and we'll give you whatever answer we want. We'll just make stuff up, but it doesn't matter. It's personal or political or religious, whatever it is, we will answer your questions when we can. This one is from Part-Time Philosopher. He says, I'm a huge fan. I never miss a show. I'm writing about an incredible struggle I've been fighting for years. I'm an Iraq war veteran with a wife, 9 kids, and have always, from the day I got back from my one combat tour, felt very awkward when people say thank you for your service. That discomfort expanded to despair during the COVID lockdowns. I believe that despair was because I was willing to die to protect the society, but others were not willing to take even modest risks for that same society. The last shoe to drop was the retreat from Afghanistan. I feel intense bitterness towards my family and towards my countrymen. His family is liberal. This bitterness is even worse around Memorial Day and Veterans Day. I feel disgust and anger towards everyone in the weeks leading up to these days. This despair is so great as to make me feel an impulse towards. My question for you is, with the intense bitterness I feel towards my family and to my fellow Americans, how do I repair my relationship with my family and stop feeling so angry around the more patriotic holidays? Thank you for sharing your ancient and hard-earned wisdom from the Part-Time Philosopher. I totally sympathize. I completely understand what you're saying. And with July 4th coming up, I suppose this is one of those holidays. This is going to sound like a tangent, but it's not. In the Gospels, Jesus tells a rich man to give all his money to the poor. And later he says, the poor you have always with you. And so it's reasonable to ask, why does he say to the rich man, give all your money to the poor? It's obviously not to make the poor go away. The poor are not going to go away even if you give all your money to them, because they'll just be poor. Again, the poor you will have always with you. So he's telling you to do it for a different reason. He's telling you to do it so you become the sort of person who will let your money go, who will who care more about your fellow man than about your money. Now, the guy who gives his money away could look at the poor who just goes back to drinking or whatever he's doing that made him poor in the first place, or just being lazy or just not caring or whatever it is that he does that makes him poor. He may go back to that poverty. And so then will the rich man become bitter, saying, I gave all my money to the poor and now the poor guy's poor again? Or will he say, I have become who God wanted me to be? And so I think that's the situation you're in. Just like you poor you will have always with you, idiots you will also have always with you. Fools, especially, you will always have with you. You went to fight for the greatest nation that's ever existed because God wanted you to be a man who would do that. And you are a man who did that, and a man who now has 9 children and has to show them the face of that man and why he is joyful to have become what God made him to be, and why he appreciates what God made him to be, even though the world remains the world. In the world, you will have trouble. It is Christ who overcame the world. Now, the thing is, we all feel like this, right? I write something beautiful and no one likes it. And I know it's beautiful, but I want people to like it, and I'm disappointed in that. We all have these problems with the world when we do what's right. And the thing is, that's because we want to say who we are. We want to say, I am this person. I'm this person. And what I do is supposed to have this outcome. All of the outcomes are with God, and your identity comes from God. You are who God tells you to be. That is where the joy is. That is where the life is. What you've got to do is, if you forgive me, you asked me for my advice, so I'm giving it to you. What I think you have to do is you have to look in the mirror and say, oh, I became who God wanted me to be. I did what God wanted me to do. I risked my life for this great, great country, which is an idea. It's a country that's an idea, and it's a nation, so it's filled with fools because it's filled with people, right? It's not about the outcomes all the time. Obviously, outcomes are important, and the country is still here because of people like you. But now you are that warrior, and you have a new mission, which is with these children to show them the face of a proud man who did what God wants him to do and is surrendering his idea of what should happen to God's idea of what should happen. And remember, outcomes are with God, and he's got them. He's going to make them good. It's just we don't always see it. We're not always here to see the way he makes things good. In my life, I can tell you, I've lived long enough to see how many things that caused me pain were used for good by God. While I sat there helplessly and often gormlessly watching and thinking, this stinks, I suddenly thought, gee, but somehow that led to something beautiful. What you have done will lead to something beautiful if you live into it and if you are proud of the man God made you. And you should be. You should be proud. That's why people are thanking you for your service, because they wish that they could be as proud of themselves as you should be of you. And so surrender the bitterness, because the bitterness is saying that you should be in charge of the outcomes. God is in charge of the outcomes, and you have done what he sent you to do. And now your new mission is to treat your family with joy and love, even understanding that some of them are going to be fools and not give you the outcomes you want. I got to stop there, which means you are about to be plunged into Klavanlessness, which is a fate worse than not Klavanlessness. It is, that's how bad it is. It is, you could have a Klavan or no Klavan, and no Klavan is much worse. So if you want to extend this period of Klavanness, you want to become a member. Go to dailywire.com/subscribe and use code Klavan at checkout for 2 months free on all annual plans. I'm not sure how you spell Klavan. You have to look it up, but it's dailywire.com/subscribe. And if you already are a member, come to Member Block.